Time travel's fake. Don't even try to tell me you can time travel, because you can't time travel. That's just not something that happens in reality. Unless that reality is virtual. Actually, I kind of guess most video games aren't VR, so I'm just talking about video games. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 insane time travel moments in video games. Starting off with number 10, it's Assassin's Creed Unity's World War II out of nowhere. Primarily set during the French Revolution, Assassin's Creed Unity tries to take advantage of the endless possibilities of the Animus, the technology that allows people to revive genetic memories in the world of the game. Most of the time, the modern-day premise is just an excuse for everything that happens in the past. The game part. In the vast majority of this series, the trips back to the past are pretty much exclusively in the main character's lifetime. But Unity does something different and introduces this thing called a Helix Rift that'll pop up from time to time, usually after major events in the game's story, which sent Arno to the distant past and sometimes into the future. I could be cynical and say the only reason these things exist is to shoehorn the Eiffel Tower into the game, one of Paris's most iconic landmarks that just so happened to not exist during the game's setting in the French Revolution. You can't have Paris without the Eiffel Tower, right? Oui, oui, una baguette, ha! Eiffel Tower! So riffs, that's what we were talking about. So hey, we're gonna do the Eiffel Tower. Why not World War II? Everyone loves World War II, right? Yeah, it doesn't matter what the reason was for putting this in. It's a pretty insane little set piece to come out of nowhere. You're just going through the story, minding your own business, and suddenly you're in occupied Paris getting shot at by airplanes. You even mount a turret, which in any other series would be pretty rote, but it feels super bizarre to do in Assassin's Creed, where advanced weaponry is like a musket. Assassin's Creed with muskets? This used to be like Renaissance stuff. Assassin's Creed Syndicate has a larger Helix Rift that takes you to World War II era London, which is actually a lot more fleshed out, but the World War II trip in Unity is where more jarring, because it's short and it really doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the game. And number 9 is Singularity, the head-spinning opening chapter. During the 7th console generation, the mind-bending twists, that was the thing. Big part of the Xbox 360 era of games was extremely convoluted twists in games that are otherwise pretty brainless action games. Singularity, obviously greatly inspired by BioShock. Not just its gameplay and setting, but story as well. What really makes it different from its inspiration, though, is how it tells its story. BioShock slowly introduces you into this world with a cast of characters that eventually pulls the rug out from under you with a huge mid-game twist, while Singularity throws you into the deep end, story-wise, right from the beginning. The time travel craziness starts right from the jump. While investigating a strange signal from an abandoned Soviet research base, you're suddenly pulled into a vision of the past where the ruined building you're in is on fire. And as you rush around trying to find an escape, you just happen to rescue a researcher who's moments away from death. My leg is hurt. It seems totally inconsequential, but this single event completely changes the rest of the game's world. Suddenly, you're fighting mysterious commandos, an unusual-looking Russian general, you call for help, you find out the United States no longer exists, and things only get crazier from there. The first time through, all of it happens super fast. It's way disorienting, so it's pretty easy to lose sight of what's actually happening. But if you play the game again, then the events described are actually pretty straightforward. When you're trapped in the time wave, the guy you rescue is actually one of the head scientists of the research facility. By rescuing him in the past, you changed history, so he was able to complete his work on a time manipulation device, and guess what? They took over the world. So at the end of the game, you're given the option to go back and fix things. You have to go back in time and kill yourself, though. It doesn't really work, so moral of the story is, if you go back in time, don't touch anything. And number 8 is Conduit 2's time-traveling power armor presidents. This is a little more awesome. At the end of Conduit 2, a game that is absolutely not about time travel, you beat the final boss, and then a portal opens to reveal 2 guys in power armor that come to recruit you to their cause. But they're not just any 2 guys. I'm dead serious when I say this. They're fricking George Washington and Abraham Lincoln wearing costumes that Gears of War guys would be like, that's a bit much. But you know what? It's not a bit much. It's fricking awesome. It's so bizarre, and it's just this thing at the end of the game. If Conduit 3 ever happens, and I'll say it right now, it probably won't, there's no possible way for it to live up to Power Armor Presidents. And that's why it's never, I mean, it might be that Conduit 2 wasn't rated great. Same time, I'm also a little curious. Who isn't? And number 7 is Effect and Cause from Titanfall 2. This mission comes up a lot, but I gotta mention here because it's a good mission. Around the halfway point of Titanfall 2's campaign, you feel like it got a pretty good read on the game. I mean, it's the sequel to Titanfall, which was a multiplayer-only game. Didn't have a campaign. Titanfall 2 has a campaign, but if you've been playing Titanfall from the beginning and you're halfway through Titanfall 2's campaign, you're kind of like, nah, this is smooth sailing. I get what's going on. And just as the game kind of starts to rest on its laurels, it's like, hey, Time Gauntlet! Now, in terms of story, it's not crazy, but the gameplay makes it pretty insane. With the Gauntlet, you're able to switch instantly between two timelines. This future where the giant research facility is destroyed and abandoned, and the past where it's still fully operational and staffed. With the power of the Time Gauntlet, you're able to do some crazy stuff with the combat. It completely changes how you approach just about every situation, and the insane thing about all of this is that it's for one level. It's not a central gimmick in the game, it just is a single level. Now, this is a super creative and experimental gameplay mechanic that plays out incredibly cool. And super unique, but Dishonored fans might think, that sounds a little familiar. Dishonored 2 did the exact same thing. It has a time travel level that operates exactly the same way. There is a past where a mansion you're in is this crazy working environment with guards and things going on, and then a future where it's all destroyed and crappy. It's almost like one ripped the other off, but they came out a month apart. 2 AAA games, which had most likely been in development for several years. Dishonored probably actually for a little bit longer, on account the first Dishonored came out in 2012 and the first Titanfall came out in 2014. But Dishonored 2 came out a month later. I think that both are actually pretty cool and unique in of themselves, but I'd be interested in what people think. I think a great place to discuss this would be the comments. At number 6 is Onimusha 3 Demon Siege, the switch that takes place in the opening. The premise alone makes this one insane. The first 2 games basically kind of feudal Japan Resident Evil. And I mean that literally. According to Wikipedia, the original idea was to make a Sengoku Biohazard, and that's basically what the games were, with a little bit more of an action twist. So if you thought Resident Evil 4 was a weird turn, you've seen nothing yet. Onimusha 3 starts off simply enough. I mean, if you ignore the completely bonkers CGI cutscene at the start that, has almost nothing to do with the game. Still in its historical wheelhouse, the main character, Samanosuke, is going to the temple to confront the series' bad guy, Nobunanga, in the place where he historically died. That's when things get utterly bizarre, because if you know anything about the game, you know what's coming. For some reason, Samurai Guy gets teleported into modern day, 2004 modern day, Paris, as in France. Paris, France, and it's under siege by Japanese demons. Then he meets a cop, played by Jean Reno, of all people, and they swap places. Jean gets sent back to historical Japan while Samanosuke is trapped in the present. Both have to look for a way to get back home. The time travel's pretty nuts on its own, but if you throw in the modern-day Paris setting that's completely divorced from anything else in the series, you're left with one of the strangest sequels I have ever seen. Probably the most bizarre aspect is that other than the wacko time travel plot that sounds weird, everything's actually pretty great and still holds up as far as PS2 games go. It's weird as hell, but it is solid. And number 5 is Dragon Quest XI, Act 3 of the game. The first 2 acts of Dragon Quest XI tell a pretty comprehensive story, so it's understandable to assume that things would be over after you travel to the bad guy's floating castle and beat him up in a multi-stage boss battle. Sure, the world got pretty messed up and a main character died, but JRPGs do that. So when time travel is suddenly introduced after the end of the game, it's a pretty big surprise. There's 2 things that really make this whole chapter totally insane, but it's actually massive and has a lot going on. Even even after, it seems like the story should be over. Also, if you choose to pursue it, you're actually reset back to your equipment and experience levels near the end of Act 1. That's how far back you travel. RPGs do not pull this kind of thing on you. Most of the time, your experience levels are set in stone. But with this game, they're seriously asking you to risk losing all that time in progress if you want to try and set things right by going back in time. Thankfully, the reverses do prove to be temporary. You eventually get back all the levels and equipment you had, but there's still a whole lot of game left. Given the knowledge of future events, you're able to change how things actually play out, and you defeat the villain early, and then you reveal the true final boss of the game. The actual events of time travel aren't really that insane, but the reveal and moment where you're actually given the chance to do it, totally nuts. It comes in after the game, it seems like it is over, but there's actually a lot left to do. At number 4 is Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed's Vision of Earth. By the third game in the series, it's expected that things are going to get weird. By the events of Future Redeemed, the world of Xenoblade has been destroyed and rebuilt at least 3 times, and each recursion has its own layers of baggage and weirdness to get through. As the send-off DLC for the presumably entire Xenoblade Chronicles series, Future Redeemed has a ton of tie-ins with previous games, and they really take the referencing up to the next level when the characters find themselves on Earth. Yes, Earth. The characters are transported back to a version of Earth before the great cataclysm that caused the universe of these games. We've seen regular old Earth a few very brief times in flashbacks, but seeing the anime-ass characters wandering around in an extremely mundane modern suburb is surreal to say the least. While the main characters have a dramatic moment in a backyard, a radio can be heard in the background, which has driven the fan community into madness. The simple radio message, which can be heard only in the background and is otherwise pretty easy to miss, talks about the events from not just the past of Xenoblade Chronicles, which everyone knows are directly tied to one another, but Xenoblade Chronicles X, Xenosaga, and even Xenogears. This one radio confirms these games are not just spiritual sequels, they are part of a single shared universe, probably the most anime insane shared universe of all time, with multiple godlike beings and branching universes, but it's all connected, and it all actually makes some degree of sense given the setting. For longtime fans, the radio is just the most insane moment of the entire series period. In the end, the time travel is more like a simulation created by a supercomputer, but it's such an unusual moment for the series, it just really stands out. And number 3 is God of War 2's Fighting the Sisters of Fate. Most of the time when a character is trying to deny fate, they mean like in a sophisticated metaphorical sense. Not Kratos. He's not challenging a predetermined path. He's literally attempting to beat up the physical manifestation of fate. Unsurprisingly, a little tougher than he thinks. Most of the game takes place on the island of creation, where the loom of fate resides. Of course, he can't just use it. The only way to use the machine is to first defeat the 3 sisters who don't just control fate, but also time. It's one of the craziest moments of the game, and the battle gets just wild when Kratos is pulled back in time to the end of the first God of War game. The plan is to destroy the Blade of the Gods, the giant sword Kratos uses to fight Ares. With that sword destroyed, Kratos will have nothing to defend himself with, so he'll be killed by Ares. So a big part of the fight is just spent trying to defeat the sword from being destroyed, all while the final battle from the first game rages in the background. It's a pretty wild moment in a game that's totally filled with pretty wild moments, and it is a great climax, one of the best games in the God of War series. At number 2 is Ghost Trick Phantom Detective's Ending. There's games with crazy plot twists, and there's Ghost Trick. This game is just a non-stop roller coaster ride where the plot twists and turns in all kinds of crazy, bizarre, unexpected, weird directions. The fact time travel factors into a game about ghosts should clue you in to just how crazy it gets. It's kind of baked into the basic premise. The whole game is about you going around finding people who have died and averting their fates by time traveling to the moments before their death, using your powers to change things so they survive. Normally, when you revert someone's fate, you're at most turning back time a few minutes or a few hours, but at the end of the game, things seem at their most dire, you manage to possess a body that died more than 10 years ago, which takes you back to the inciting incident of the entire story. And there's so much to unpack here that is just nuts. I mean, just look at what's happening during the climax of the game. You possess a missile to reach a body that's on a platform piloted by a robot that was launched from a submarine that's sinking into the depths of the sea. When I said things are dire, I meant it. But when you get into the park and use your powers to avert the meteorite from killing the guy you thought that you were, no, you're killing his cat. Everything gets reversed and the present gets totally reset. What I just said makes no sense at all. But if you play the game, you'll get it. It is an amazing experience and one of the best adventure games ever made. The twists are insane, but also they're good. And finally at number 1, the third birthday, Time Zero, aka Prepare to be confused and angry. Here's a game on the total opposite end of the spectrum. Its twists are crazy, but they're not good. They're actually bad, like very bad. There are a lot of baffling twists out there that people will go to bat for, but I am unaware of anybody, particularly a significant contingent of people, who is willing to defend the plot of The Third Birthday. The very basic plot of the game is that there's a mysterious event called Time Zero, which birthed these monstrous alien invaders called the Twisted, who've infested New York. It's basically the plot that you come up with for what would be a cool video game when you're 7 or 8. Okay, so at the end of the game, Time Zero is finally revealed, and who it is something. You want to know how convoluted this game is? I've played it. I've rewatched this cutscene. I'm currently looking at the wiki's extensive description of the events, and I am struggling to come up with words to explain this mess to you, the person who I have to assume doesn't know what the hell this is. So this is going to sound like the ramblings of a madman, and I apologize in advance for that, but there is no other way. So Aya, the main character, is getting married to Kyle in the past. Some police dudes bust in and shoot everyone for some reason. Then Eve, who is Aya's sister, who's actually her clone, possesses her dead body for some reason, and this creates Time Zero for some reason. The only way to stop it is, and this is real, create a new timeline where Eve's physical body, which has mitochondria superpowers and can also possess people, doesn't exist for some reason, and Aya's soul doesn't exist for some reason. Do you detect a running theme? This whole baffling series of events ends with the odious conclusion of Eve in Aya's body still getting married to Kyle in this new timeline. There's so much I had to leave out, but trust me, it doesn't make this make sense. The more you know, the more it feels like you're having a stroke. So that's it. I'm tapping out. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.